about it or saying anything about it. And I began to argue with people and say, hey, like, this is bad. This is divisive. This is not what we're about. This is a complete 180 in the values of the scene that has made it this cool, and very like sort of vibrant scene with all these bands. And this is going to ruin things, and it's going to turn people against each other.
Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to another edition of the Another Nobody podcast with me, your favorite nobody, Travis Myers. Today I have a special guest. He's a dear friend of mine. His name is Drew Champion, and he's from the band The Split Seconds, who happens to do our theme song for the show. We're going to talk a little bit about punk rock, where it's going. So please, stick around, take a listen. It's a good one. Drew Champion, one of my favorite rockers. How the hell are you, pal?
I'm doing well, Travis. How you doing?
Good, good. I'm so glad we were able to get together today.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to this very much because, as a lot of our listeners don't know, we have a bit of a history. We've done lots of shows together, put records out together, toured together. And always I have enjoyed your company.
That's right. Now we've been good friends. One of the people that I regularly talk to, because one of the people whose opinions I really respect. And so I'm glad that we're able to have one of these conversations in a more public setting.
Yeah, me too. And hopefully we'll turn some people onto your music too, which is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Absolutely phenomenal. Now, we got to do the boring thing though.
Sure.
And give us a little bio. Tell us about yourself so our listeners know who they're talking to.
Yeah, so I'm Drew Champion. I'm the lead singer and guitar player for a band called The Split Seconds. And people might know me also as the guitar player for Susie Moon, and Susie is also my wife. I always, I'm known for playing in punk rock, and I was always a punk rock. I always enjoyed punk rock. When I was a kid, you'd turn on the radio and it was a lot of grunge, and so you'd have Stone Temple Pilots, and you'd have Days of the New and Collective Soul, and they all had like the lumberjack voice, and they'd slower tempos and like, but every once in a while a song would come through the radio. And I remember, the Green Day songs, or like the Lemonheads cover of Mrs. Robinson.
Yes.
And I didn't know what it was called, but I was like, what is that? That's the thing that really resonates with me. And then when I think I was in 5th grade, and my mom's driving me around in the green Ford Taurus, like default 90s family car. And Blink-182's Damn It came on the radio. And the sound of the guitar, really grabbed me. And I was like, what is that called? So I started getting into, found out it was called punk rock, and taught myself to play with just tabs and ear in the beginning. And started listening to bands, becoming the little miscreant, teenager kid that I was. And then eventually I got turned on to a band called The Living End. And unlike a lot of punk rock, there's a lot of punk rock bands and singers and songwriters who are great songwriters, but not a lot of them are great musicians. They're out there. It's just sort of few and far between that they're great instrumentalists. And Chris Chaney from The Living End really is a great guitar player. And so that sort of got me taking musicianship more seriously, and also branching out into learning different styles. And so I started studying jazz. My teacher then turned me on to classical. I was listening to a lot of Beatles and reggae, all kinds of stuff. And I sort of drifted away from punk rock for a while. But when I was in my early 20s, I was driving around, and it was late at night, and that's when the DJs from the corporate radio stations get to play the stuff they actually like,
Yes.
The Buzzcocks' Ever Falling in Love came on the radio, and it was the first time I'd heard it in a long time, and hearing it with new ears. And I was like, man, this is so great and just vital. And it just grabbed me again, the way that it did in the beginning. And I said, I got to get back to this. I got to get back to my roots and what really got me going. And so I formed a band called The Coastals, and we went into the studio with Don Zintara at Inner Ear Studios. And Don did all the Discord stuff. He did Bad Brains and Scream and Minor Threat, Fugazi, Rites of Spring, all that stuff. And
well, so people don't know, you are from the DC area.
Right. That's right. I'm from the DC area. Grew up outside of DC, and I was always going to punk shows in DC and playing in punk bands in DC, playing the DC venues, listening to the DC stuff. Friends lived in DC, so I was going down there and being a little troublesome kid in the city and stuff like that.
It was a solid scene at the time, and of course, very influential.
Oh, it was really strong in the '80s, and I have a lot of friends who were around, especially in that era, and were in those bands. Um, and yeah, I mean the impact of that scene and Discord Records, and especially like the DIY ethic that they came up. It sort of made punk like viable, and it made it independent, and that allowed it to sort of thrive outside of the mainstream, and then eventually it was so good that it penetrated the mainstream. And that was it was important growing up in DC because at the time, like a lot of the bands, it was like kind of the sunny California punk rock thing that was big. And the pop punk was coming up, which is what had got me listening in the first place. But still, like the DC stuff, it was a bit darker, it was a bit harder. It was referencing a lot of the British stuff, and so that sort of differentiated how I was looking at punk rock compared to how maybe a lot of other people in my generation would have gotten
Kind
it.
of, it was very similar, not similar, but yeah, similar, I would say, to our introduction. When I was a teenager. Now, granted, it was brand new. Punk, the whole word punk rock, everything was brand new at the time.
Hmm.
But for us, we were rockers. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this in the past. Like for us, my brother Henry and I and other guys I grew up with, kids I grew up with, we would go to shows and literally see the Talking Heads or the Ramones or any of these bands that were very popular in New York at the time. You
Hmm.
know, and we would go down to the CBGBs or the Ritz, and people are like, "Oh, you were back there in the day." Let me tell you, my friend, okay? All the bullshit, sucky shows that you've played in your life and we've both been to in our life where there was nobody in the venue, that's exactly how it was for us too. It was not this fantasy, wonderful birth of punk rock thing that happened. It was small, dingy, unattended, et cetera, just like every other show that goes on today.
Yep.
So when people wax romantic, it wasn't all that romantic, I promise you.
Yeah.
But I often laugh and I quote my brother Henry because how you mentioned the kind of like the California sunny pop punk sound that was so popular in your time.
Hmm.
For us, classic rock it wasn't classic yet. We listened to these bands, the classic rock bands, as they were actually coming out. And my brother Henry used to call it Jersey nice kid music. Okay. Which
Yeah.
I always got a kick I still quote him today for that because it was true, you know? I'm sorry, but Bon Jovi, as popular as they were and as popular as they still are, and for me, I even reminisce about them popular, but at the time, for me, it was garbage music because it was so simple and it didn't have the deep meaning of, again, a Talking Head song might. It didn't have that edge to it. Something like, and again, back to musicianship. We're talking about the Pretenders, maybe. I just thought they were phenomenal. That was one of my favorite bands of all times, and today they still have stood the test of time, even though they are now considered classic rock. But I'm
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, no, yeah, a band like Bon Jovi, and I like a lot of stuff, so I like a lot of Bon Jovi songs. But there's a reason why I'm not in like a hair metal band, and that is that the thing is that as well crafted as those Bon Jovi songs are, it lacks an authenticity, and it lacks an edge, and it lacks an integrity that you find in the best punk rock. Sort of a vulnerability, and also just sort of just a challenge, that you find in the best punk rock. It's not in all punk rock, but it's in the good stuff. Yeah.
Well, correct. Well, so much of, quote unquote, if I can do that with my little bunny ear fingers,
Yeah.
uh, of punk rock is just like any other pop music. It's completely fake and phony,
Yeah.
you know, and it grew into that because popularity brings that.
Hmm.
Popularity brings the whole jumping on the bandwagon bunch,
Yeah.
that want to get on that train, and unfortunately, they don't have the heart, or the spine that the original artist had, you
Yeah.
know?
And you see that, a genre will come up or a subgenre and it will become popular. And then you do have sort of the copycats, where maybe they've got the same look and the same sound or similar look and similar sound, but they don't have they don't have that original spirit. They don't have the original guts and intellectual understanding maybe of what they're trying to accomplish. And so, but those bands, a lot of the time they sort of wash out. And it's funny because there are people who they'll bunny hop from genre to genre to genre,
Yes.
trying to ride each wave, but they're always behind. They're always behind. You have to innovate. You have to think, well, what do I want to hear, and what do I want to see that I'm not
Correct.
seeing? And um, that's what you have to put out there. You have to differentiate yourself.
No, again, if you wanna anybody that wants to jump on a bandwagon, by the time you've heard of the bandwagon, it's already passed you by.
You're too late. Yeah, you can be inspired by stuff. By all means, be inspired.
Oh, absolutely.
But the idea that you're going to, oh, hey, these guys are big, so now we're gonna try to do that thing. You're too late. You missed it. You missed it.
Well, I think too, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, but I'd like to get your thoughts on it now. So many this is what's happened with so many bands and so many genres because the record labels excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. The record labels get involved, and they decide, "Well, we're gonna collect up all these bands of this certain genre,"
Hmm.
okay? And, of course, it's already after the fact because in the cities, in the streets, wherever, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, I don't care where it is, the UK, once the public knows about it, it's no longer cool, you see? And then the record labels start pumping this stuff out, you know, like they're flipping burgers at McDonald's,
Yeah.
and again, it's now like a McDonald's burger. It's the same as everybody else, you
Hmm.
know? And it really dilutes all of the cool. I mean, it doesn't mean they're not gonna make millions of dollars off of it, you know? Some of these pre-made, if you will, fast food bands won't make millions of dollars. It is, again, a dilution of what it started with.
Yeah. And
And that's with every genre, not just rock and roll, that's every
no, it's
genre.
every genre. And
Yeah.
and you hear those stories about, when Van Halen got big, then all of a sudden, the labels descend on the strip and every label is trying to find their Van Halen. And you hear the same thing with in Seattle. Nirvana comes out and gets mega, and all of a sudden every record label descends on that. You hear that story sort of over and over again. I think it actually happened with punk rock early on too. I think it happened in England, where after you have the Pistols and the Clash and stuff like that, and Stiff Little Fingers, like the real core of that beginning. Then you did have, especially into the early '80s, this watered down version of bands that tried to hop on the bandwagon. Some of them have great songs and stuff like that, but ultimately, I think a lot of them don't. Yeah, they don't have that authentic edge and spirit that you heard on those Clash records and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then again, like anything as far as the fan goes too, and believe me, I'm not beating up on the fan. I love the fans
Hmm.
and I love all the different ones, but you can see it, in the punk rock thing going back to England. I remember living it and going to shows, and we didn't even know that we even consider ourselves to be punk rockers. We would just go to shows because we wanted to go to a show.
Hmm.
And we rocked out and had a great time and we're like, fuck yeah, that band is for us, you
Yeah.
know?
Hmm.
And then I don't it was probably 3, 4 years, and all of a sudden, that fashion from England showed up in New York.
Hmm.
The crazy mohawks, the ridiculous makeup, the, uh, you know, the silly dressing yourself out of a dumpster stuff. For us, it was jeans, T-shirts, and construction boots or Pro-Ked sneakers.
Yeah.
That's what we wore every day, and we continued to wear that. But now that I'm in my 60s, I still wear the same outfit. But as much as I do, and I do have fun and appreciate the real, well, we call them here in America, the street punks now who,
Hmm.
have the whole, the hair, the whole outfit, I love it, but I could never see doing that to myself. All right.
Yeah.
And
And
yet there's no way in the world that you again are doing the bunny ears, quote unquote, punker than I am. I've never
no,
subscribed to that nonsense either.
no.
But so
But that was one of the cool things about punk rock is there's all these different subgenres. So you got the street punks, you got the crust punks. I could never do either of those things. I would, because it wouldn't be authentic to me. You know, you got just sort of straight ahead punk rock. You've got the Skins in there. You've got sort of the reggae influence, maybe the ska stuff. You've got and
well, some of my favorite stuff.
Absolutely. And then you do have even like pop punk. Now some people don't like it, but that's cool. But you know, you don't have to like it if you don't want to. If you're a street punker and you don't like the pop punk, you don't have to like it. That's cool. You know? And skate punk, and then you even get into like emo and hardcore. So there's amazing like stylistic diversity uh within this banner called punk rock. And I was thinking about this is you got Gigi Allen and like Devo in the same sort of genre, in the same artistic movement, in the same scene. They're both sort of being animated by the same spirit.
Yeah,
And that's so cool. And you know what? Gigi Allen fans, Murder Junkies fans don't have to like Devo, and Devo fans don't have to like Gigi Allen.
correct.
But it was a tolerant space that said, hey, if that's your thing and that's what is special to you, or that's what you want to express, then hey, then come as you are.
Yes, yes. Well, I agree with you so much, and I I think that the thing is there is the honesty
Mm-hmm.
and the originality is where the punk moniker should lie,
Yeah.
if you will. And it did because, I mean, Devo could not be any more different than the Murder Junkies, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Completely, completely different worlds.
Right.
However, I am certain that the first, you know, 5, 6, 8 different record labels that looked at Devo said no, and, everybody that looked at the Murder Junkies said absolutely no, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And yet
Abs-
they both hold their place in history.
they do, and rightfully so, I think. And
Yes,
I
absolutely.
wouldn't, I wouldn't be caught dead at a Murder Junkie show.
Yeah.
But good on them. Like, but I can respect what they're doing. I can respect the risk. I can expect that they're going there, that they're
Yeah.
doing it. You know what I mean?
Well, I have only seen the Murder Junkies once with Gigi Allen because that was a long time ago,
Uh-huh.
and then I hosted him after the fact. Jeez, I wanna say 3 or 4 times, and I can remember the first time at our place, Snapper McGee's, and, they said, "Well, can we give him a true Murder Junkie show?" I said, "Please,"
Yeah.
and the look on the well, for lack of a better word, I guess, the straight girl's face. When I say straight, I don't mean sexually. I
No,
mean
yeah.
the very straight and narrow regular person that walked in and
Yeah.
saw the naked drummer because he is completely naked,
Yep.
playing the drums.
Yeah.
Only at this stage of the game, he was probably 50 years old,
Right.
and was not something that anybody wanted to look at. But it was a hell of a show, regardless.
That's
Every
great.
time we hosted him, it was a great show. So
Yeah. And I love that. It wouldn't be right for me. It wouldn't be right for Joe Strummer, but I love the fact, hey, if it's right for him and it's going to be shocking and transgressive and all that stuff, hey, there's a place for that, you know?
absolutely,
And
yeah.
and so more like good on you. Yeah.
And that's the thing too that I think we've lost so much of. Of course, it is harder today when I mean, open up your phone, you see the most ridiculous everybody's got the most ridiculous porn in the world on their phone, or spend 5 minutes on, Twitter or what's called X now, and you'll see some of the most horrific videos coming in from all over the world. So it is hard to intentionally be shocking today, I think, for most people, all right? But there was a time for it, you know?
Yeah.
And now somehow punk rock in particular, just because 'cause we're talking about punk rock,
Yeah.
it's kind of lost that a little bit, you know? And they've kind of flipped the script a little bit where now everything has become offensive.
Yeah, and this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot. Is there's been a total change in the ethos of punk rock, sort of in the last 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
It starting from the late 60s and up until, sometime in the mid 2010s. It really there was obviously there was a whole variety of different bands with different views, but overarching there was sort of this ethos of where the highest value was like self-expression. Um, and I saw it starting to percolate up maybe like 2013 or something like that, where there was a subset of punk rockers who were sort of converging on a very extreme political views, which wouldn't be unusual in punk rock. That's always been.
I would say, not to cut you off, but I would say punk rock, and part of the beauty of punk rock, it has, in my mind, always been the most political
Yeah.
of all music genres.
Yeah.
I
It
mean, many bands, which we may get into, you know, are completely built on politics. Usually those bands are not to my taste because they're not fun bands, or they become quite boring, or they also become phony because now you're writing a political song just to write a political song, as
Right.
opposed to truly giving me something to stick my teeth into. But I can't think of anything or any genre of music that has ever been more political
No, I
than
mean,
punk rock.
uh, and I'm not sure how much it started out to be that. I'm not sure how much, Iggy Pop putting peanut butter on himself on the stage, like, was intending this to turn into a very political genre. But I think that since it was a genre that valued sort of transgression and
Yep.
pushing back against, social dogmas, that it that, that I think that it that's just how it played out. Um, and so, having sort of fringe political views or something like that has always been a fixture of it. And some bands did it really well, or do which these are the bands that understand the difference between art and propaganda. And so, propaganda, you're going to come out and you're just going to say, what the political slogan is or something like that. With art, and you think of, the great artists who have done this, and I think of, like, Bob Dylan's a great example of this. I think the Beatles did this really well. Stiff Little Fingers, The Clash, they're not coming right out and telling you this is what you need to believe. They're taking these ideas and these feelings, and they're turning it into something tangible, which is their songs. And that's the difference between a propagandist and an artist. Propagandist is just going to put it right in your face and tell you exactly what it is that they're believing. An artist is actually going to take these ideas, put it into something, into this creation, and then you can pull from it what you want, and
Yes.
from their perspective, I think they hope that you pull what they're trying to say. They hope that they're being understood, but that's the challenge of being an artist. Yeah.
I'm with you 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And again, for the propagandist, again, now it's become phony to me, and that's where I get turned off, you know?
It's
And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of songs I like because I like the song, but I get turned off from where you're coming from, and I think the second I think you're trying to convince me or sway me in a certain way, I'm
mhm,
not as interested, you know? I would rather be entertained first
mhm.
and then maybe find a message after.
And that's what the best political bands have always done. And sometimes you don't even, sometimes they're very effective, and you don't even realize it. I think, I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles is not about holding hands. you know, and so, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is not about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, right? It's
Yep.
about something else. And you can
Yes.
agree with these things or you can disagree with them. But that is very effectively done art, political art. It's the same thing with the Sex Pistols. Pretty Vacant. These songs have political implications. They have political messages, but they're not necessarily beating you over the head exactly with what their policy prescriptions are.
Right.
Yeah, but
A lot of it I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, what was different about, what I was seeing in the punk rock scene in about 2013, like, starting there is when I began to really notice a change in the shift. It wasn't that people had fringe political views or extreme political views or passionately held political views. It was that they intended to enforce those political views and to
Yes, sir.
exclude people who weren't completely on board with them.
Yes, sir.
So whereas punk rock had always been a space, and I think, Dead Kennedy's song "Nazi Punks Fuck Off" is a good example, where it said, he says, "Punk ain't a religion. Punk is about thinking for yourself,"
Yes.
and that was the ethos.
Yes.
And so you could have, Ian MacKaye on stage singing Straight Edge, and then you could have Keith Morris singing on stage, singing Wasted, and
Yes.
they could exist in the same musical community, in the same artistic community. And it wasn't this thing of, no, we're going to force you to not drink, or we're going to
Right.
force you to drink, or whatever else.
Mhm.
It was a tolerance of people having their own views, having their own things, and that's what was really changing. That's what was really changing. And come later to find out. So this is called intersectionality, and it's something that people are familiar with. It goes by woke, is sort of the colloquial thing. I don't like that term, so I'll
Mhm.
refer to it as intersectionality. But that infected a lot of areas of the culture, especially in the entertainment world. And punk was kind of one of the early adopters of this. And so I saw this come sort of from zero until 100. And this doesn't get talked about very much in the punk scene in particular. It's kind of an open secret that, hey, this used to have one whole set of values and priorities, this scene.
Yes.
And now it has an entirely different one. And the reason why people don't talk about it is because they're afraid of being the next victims of it. They're afraid of being the ones who are excluded, purged, blacklisted, and so on. And you get
The whole cancel culture shit.
that's exactly what it is. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the irony is that it's the absolute antithesis of what punk rock had at least stated that it was. The values that it held out as the things that were cherished. Um, it's the complete reversal of that
Well,
because it's very authoritarian.
oh, exactly.
It's very totalitarian.
Biggest problem that I've had with so much of these, again, changes in our music world, but they are a mirror to the changes in the nation and or Western civilization as a whole,
Yeah.
where, again, for myself, okay, um, I guess, I would consider myself to be a free speech absolutist. I think anybody should be able to say whatever they want to say, whenever they want to say it, okay?
Hmm.
If I hate what you say, that's cool. That's on me. And you know what? I'm still glad you said it because
Right.
now I know who you are,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so I love it. I cannot imagine anybody ever, you know, I don't get where this mentality comes from where they want to curtail free speech, be it in entertainment, in music, on television, wherever. Yes, I don't think maybe people should be showing X-rated movies at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for my children to tune into,
Hmm.
well, my children, my grandchildren to tune into, you know? But the idea is that we've definitely gone in the wrong direction, okay? And so many, many things. And I've seen it really a lot in the music world, and
Hmm.
particularly in the punk rock music world, which
Yeah.
was the bastion of free speech in my time. And it's what we love so much. You knew when you made your album, you know, go right back again, let's say 1970, 1972, 1976, 1980, whatever. Okay. If I cursed, I'm never going to be on the radio.
Right.
You knew it,
Yeah.
but you did it because it was in your heart, because it fit the song, you know? You knew if you were gonna be too political, you were never gonna be on the radio, you know? The Saturday Night Live, okay, banned Elvis Costello because he played a song that was too political, and they told him not to play it, and he played it anyway,
And it's an
you know?
iconic moment.
Yes.
It's a very punk rock moment. Yeah.
It is. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sinead O'Connor, agree with her or not, was she looking for attention or not? When she tore up the photograph of the Pope over abortion rights in Ireland, okay,
Hmm.
that's some punk rock shit,
It
man.
is.
And today, it's actually fairly mild-mannered to what upsets people today, but the funny thing is, the people that are getting the most upset are our punk rock friends,
I know. Yeah.
and it drives me out of my mind, you
Yeah.
know?
And it was strange to see, when I first started seeing this, I sort of thought it was an aberration. And I thought, well, okay, well, it's a big scene. It's a lot of different people, and it's just going to kind of get subsumed into it. I think, you know, I think it was early 2015 because it just started percolating up, but early 2015, I have so many experiences with this stuff, and my friends have so many experiences. We couldn't possibly have the time to go through all of them, but there are a couple of things that stand out. And so, the Split Seconds. This is before I met you. This is before we had gotten signed, and we played a little house show right off of the University of Maryland campus in College Park, and there was it was what was called a safe space. And for those who aren't familiar, what a safe space is basically would be a house venue or just a venue, and it enforces intersectional ideology. And so basically, if you're not on board with these very like sort of narrowly prescribed political and ethical and social views, and you say or do anything that's outside of that, then you're out. Like
Yes.
you're fucking out. And uh, I didn't have, I'm a guitar player. Like, I don't have that particularly edgy views, and I'm not a discriminatory person or anything like that. It was no problem for me to just go and play the show, but going there is very strange. It was it's sort of a cult like atmosphere. For instance, instead of clapping for a band, they would snap their fingers. And the idea here is that, well, there are people who have PTSD from like traumatic experiences, and to be welcoming to them. Yeah, so we don't want to trigger their PTSD. Now, mind you, these are all like 19-year-old college kids, right? Like this isn't like my uncle coming back from Vietnam, okay?
Right.
Where this,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
and also they're at a rock and roll show
they're at a rock
where
and roll show.
the amps are cranked up to 11,
Right,
you know?
exactly, but you have to snap, right?
Right.
And, that's just part of the weirdness, and I recall, talking with a girl, outside, and she, clearly a white girl, blonde hair, fair skin, and she says she's studying Latin American studies because of her Hispanic heritage, and she says also, yeah, I'm white too, but that's my bad side, and I was struck with it because well, that's about the most racially prejudiced thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yes. Yes.
But you're just all right, okay. But what happened later in the night is when I really started to have sort of a moral issue with, and to start seeing like, hey, this is a problem. Like this is really a problem. So we were loading out after the show. We're putting our gear in our cars, and there's a row of sorority and fraternity guys who are walking up the street past the house venue just to go back. They're coming back from a formal or something like that. So they're dressed nice, and they're just being quiet, minding their own business, just walking past. And a whole phalanx of these kids from the safe space come onto the porch, and they come on even to the roof of this house, and they're hurling abuse at these fraternity and sorority kids, including yelling things like, "I hope you get raped." They're yelling at these.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And yeah, I know. And it was pretty shocking. And, these are the people who are holding themselves up, by the way, as being these paragons of moral virtue.
It's better than me.
And I would never have, I was never in a fraternity. It wouldn't have made sense for me to be there. I probably wouldn't hang out with those guys. But if they're just going to walk past the house, like, well, I'm certainly not going to bother them, and I'm certainly not going to be yelling at the girls that I hope they get raped.
Yes.
And it was disgusting. And there were a lot of experiences, sort of like that I was having in these years as this was building up.
Well, I remember, I mean, an anecdote of my own, that reminds me of this. A place I'm sure you're familiar with, Kung Fu Necktie in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
We were doing a show there. I wish I could remember everybody that was there. I can't, but it doesn't make a difference. The point of it was we were doing a thing and we got some pizzas that came in, right?
Hmm.
And there was a young woman who worked there, okay, who was outright offended and had to, literally break our balls, give us a hard time, basically begin to refuse us service. Although she did give us our beers, it was like, we
Pulling.
were the last in line for everything because we had pepperoni and sausage pizzas, and she was doing the vegetarian vegan thing. The thing that gets me is I could give a shit what anybody does. I really can. I mean, you know me, Drew. I mean, I'm truly I don't even like the word libertarian. I'm a fierce independent. All
Yeah.
right. I don't.
You're truly liberal.
I do not truly. There you go.
You're
Truly
truly
liberal.
liberal.
I am not of the left or the right. I give me a topic. You'll be surprised what I say, regardless of what the topic is. I'm
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
And I think those on the left consider me to be on the right, and those on the right consider me on the left, and that's fine with me because I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about me anyway. But the fact that this woman went off, this young woman of 22, 23 years old, was so indignant
Hmm.
that we had pepperoni pizzas on the bar was something that not only did we laugh about quite a bit, but was a little bit insulting, to tell you the truth. And not insulting that I cared what she wasn't eating our food. How in the world is whatever we're eating insulting you? What in the world does it have to do with you? Shut the fuck up and get us our beer. You know? And it was one of those moments that shocked me. And it was probably around that time that you're thinking there where, you know, 2010 to 2015 in that neighborhood, because I had never saw or heard of this sort of behavior before. Although today it is quite common, I'm sorry to say. Although I think it's getting better, to tell you the truth. But anyway, so that's my little bit of a story of people just ranting over
I,
pepperoni.
I recall when it was building up, and we were recording. I was recording at the time, and I was driving out a ways. And I was telling our engineer about like this weird, bad kind of thing that I was seeing. And I'm like, I don't know, they're just really intolerant. They're like honestly really racially prejudiced, really sexist, like really hateful and exclusionary. And he like didn't believe me at first. Like I don't know if he thought I was making it up or whatever, but he was sort of like, okay, I don't know. And then it continued to sort of build up. And after maybe 6 more months, he was like, oh, whoa, this is real. But it was a bizarre thing to witness. And the thing is, and because I had enough interactions and sort of arguments, particularly after the story that I told about, them yelling at these girls, I hope you get raped. I I was like, hey, nobody's talking about this. Nobody is pushing back on this. People are either bought into it or they're scared of it. So they just want to keep quiet and sit in the back. And so this thing is like growing and nobody's doing anything about it or saying anything about it. And I began to argue with people and say, hey, like this is bad. This is divisive. This is not what we're about. This is a complete 180 in the values of the scene that has made it this cool, and very like sort of vibrant scene with all these bands. And this is going to ruin things, and it's going to turn people against each other. And I basically what ended up happening was that, within DC, within like the punk rock clique, I was out, man. I got blackballed. People were talking shit behind my back, saying I was a racist. I was like, I'm literally saying don't be racist.
Yes,
Where did you
yes,
get that
yeah,
from? And it was tough for us to book shows. People wouldn't book us. People weren't coming to the shows. And so I basically said, look, this is going to burn itself out at some point. You
yes,
guys go ahead and go over there and be weird. We're going to have to find our own way. We're going to have to find our own people. And that's sort of what we ended up doing. But it didn't stop building up. I mean, it is at this point, it is like basically captured the entire scene, and it had done that by about 2017.
yes. I agree. I remember one more thing that I'd like to mention. I remember when the Interrupters
Mm,
were first coming on the scene, or getting a name for themselves, I should say,
fantastic.
and a band that, although has done very, very well for themselves, I think if it wasn't for this silly nonsense politics, they'd be 10 times bigger than they are
Oh
today,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And I just thought they were phenomenal. I think they're a phenomenal, phenomenal band. Listeners, if you don't know the Interrupters, check them
Hmm.
out.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
And I just loved everything about them. Perfect band, would not change a thing. Okay. And then I was looking them up, probably trying to book them or find them or whatever, seeing when they were on tour. And I came across some articles where they were calling them a far right band. And I was like, what?
Hmm.
Far right? Are you kidding me? The Interrupters?
Right.
They are, for the most part, a pretty mild-mannered mainstream band. Now, I like them because they're intelligent, they're
Yeah,
catchy.
they're
When they
very
do speak about politics, they do it in the old-fashioned punk rock ethos, which I do find to be very refreshing, where it is, yes, fight the power,
right. Yeah.
which is one of their songs, okay?
Yep.
And they have that, again, just really, really well written, well crafted songs,
Hmm.
tremendously well performed. I
Hmm.
love everything about them. And to read these articles, and it wasn't one, it was one after the other. You start digging, and it's one after the other after the other. And I'm thinking to myself, I know these songs. I know this band. They are anything from far right, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Politically charged, some songs, yes.
Hmm.
Overall, no, pretty mild-mannered. Well, going back to my time, if we remember, and a little bit about what we talked about before, uh, Susie and the Banshees,
Hmm.
all right? Very, very mild-mannered band at the time and today. Slightly political? Not really, not that I could think of, but I can find you photographs on my phone of Susie Sue herself, wearing Nazi paraphernalia because it was shocking.
Right. That's right. It was transgressive. Yeah. The Dead Boys wore that
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
Lemmy wore that stuff.
Lemmy all the time.
Let's see, Sid Vicious would come. I mean, they'd be performing a song about abortion, and Sid Vicious is wearing like a swastika,
Yes.
and it was understood that this was it was transgressive. that
Yes.
it was pushing the boundaries of what are you allowed to say, where, it was just pushing back on social dogmas, for pushing back on to have a space where you could say these things. It was staking out the far boundaries of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And God love it for that, you
Yeah.
know?
And
Um,
it's really, to me, just going in a terrible, terrible direction. And it is in fact, you know what? Well, while we're on this, I don't wanna belabor the point, but we're gonna go to break in a minute, but before we do, I'm gonna see if I can play one of your songs, and the one I'm interested in, okay, kinda touches on this a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, alright? Would you like to introduce and tell us a little bit about, before we play, um, Little Lizzie Icepick?
Little Lizzie Ice Pick, sure. Do you want me to tell the whole story here?
Yeah, knock yourself out, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, whatever you wanna share.
Yeah, so this was the song's called Little Lizzie Ice Pick. It's by my band, The Split Seconds, and essentially, what the song is about was that uh, the band played a show at DC9, which is a club in DC, and we had a song in the set that was sort of a instrumental tune. And at the time, we didn't have a name for the song, so every night we'd get on stage, and Sean, who was our drummer, he would write a different sort of joke as the set list named song. So you'd get to and every night we would kind of figure out, okay, that's what it's called tonight. It's a little laugh. And so that night, after hot off playing some of these safe space shows, he had called the song the Safe Space Shuffle, and a very mild joke. Okay, and so we get to the song in the set, and I say, hey, yeah, this is the Safe Space Shuffle, and we go into it, and there was sort of muted laughter and fear and a couple of people leaving the room. And I was like, whoa, okay, it's a pretty mild joke, and that's a pretty severe reaction.
And this is for a song with no lyrics.
Is there a song for no lyrics?
Yeah.
They're just mad that I literally just said safe space or something, and maybe I didn't deal with, as the amount of gravitas that it deserved or something, which is astonishingly unpunk. This attitude. And anyway, I didn't think much of it. So whatever. So we go back to the green room after the show, and we're getting interviewed by a reporter who's out for a local publication. And she, at the same time, so this night is the first night that our bass player had his girlfriend come to the show, and I'd been very kind to her. I met her, and thank you for coming out. I'm glad to meet you, and I hope you enjoy the show and all that stuff. But he brings her into the back of the green room during this interview. And as we're going through the interview, it comes up, and the interviewer says, "And so, what was the meaning of that song name?" And I just basically said, like, well, this the Safe Space song is just kind of a joke name. We've been playing these places. It's kind of a weird vibe, and it's not really like what we're about with as being punk rockers and stuff like that. And so our bassist girlfriend actually, just in the middle of the interview in the green room, starts going off on me. She just starts yelling at me, "Fuck you, you fucking privileged straight white man. You don't know the lived experience, all of the intersectional jargon." And I thought she was joking. I literally were in the green room, and I thought she was joking. And it turns out that she wasn't joking, and she was really mad at me. And then, that basically this flares up again later on. I'm just at her house again, just trying to like be cool to her and make small talk. And she starts yelling at me at the same thing. And so I did what a punk rocker and what a musician does, and I wrote a song about it, and it's called Little Lizzie Ice Pick. And it takes, so the name Little Lizzie Ice Pick, it's called that because so she was like a Trotskyist. That was like her political ideology. And so, as we know, Trotsky that got taken out with an ice pick. It's not a violent threat against her. At the end of the song, I repeat, "I'm not your enemy." Like, I don't know why you're yelling at me. Like, I'm just trying to be cool here. So, but yeah, you can take it away. Little Lizzie Ice Pick by the Split Seconds.
Here we go.
Little Lizzie Icepick's got a lot of things to tell me. First time that we met, when she's giving me the third degree. She don't understand me, but she's got feelings. Looking at the world through a glass ceiling. Little Lizzie Icepick, she loves loves picking on me. Little Lizzie Ice Pick's gonna make me see it her way. Hammer and sickle on the bumper of a Chevrolet. Don't know how to mix it, but she's gotta break it. She knows how to dish it out, but can't take it. Little Lizzie Ice Pick, she loves picking on me. The ice pick's gonna tell me what I done wrong. One-way argument as productive visiting John Bomb. She don't understand me, but she's got feelings. Looking at the world through a glass ceiling. Little is the ice pick. I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy.
Hey, how you doing? It's me again, another nobody, Travis Myers. And today we're going to talk whiskey. I know most of you think of me as an all-American patriotic type guy, and you are right. But when it comes to whiskey, and drinking whiskey, which I do, I always go for the Irish stuff. And my choice, when it comes to the Irish stuff, is Powers Irish Whiskey. Established back in 1791. It's a triple distilled, oak-aged whiskey. Powers is simply magic. It also happens to be the #1 selling whiskey in Ireland, which has got to say something, because if it's good enough for the Irish, it's good enough for you. So the next time you raise a glass, fill it with Powers, and think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. This is a 2024 American Eagle gold coin, which I bought along with several others last year. I'm very happy to report that its value has gone up over 40% in the first year. See, I was encouraged to buy some gold by a financial advisor friend who suggested I be more diversified with my investments. She said gold and silver was a very safe place to park some money, as well as a good hedge against inflation. So I took her advice, and all I can say is I wish I had bought more, as it's been so very, very good to us so far. Now, I purchased these gold coins from the good people over at stackingboise.com, who could not have been nicer, more knowledgeable, or more helpful. Now, I'm certainly no financial expert, but I will say from experience, if you're looking to make an investment, buy yourself some gold. And some real gold that you could hold in your hand, just like this coin you see here. And if you do, then do like I did and get with the good folks over at stackingboise.com. I'm telling you, they're good people, they took good care of me, and they'll take good care of you. Again, that's stackingboise.com. And hey, tell them Travis sent you. All right, we are back with my good friend here, Drew Champion, and just, I guess, what are we talking about, man? We're talking about, I don't want to say the fall or the death of rock and roll and punk rock, but it's kind of in a wheelchair at the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit moribund. Yeah, just talking about the sort of the complete change in the ethos that's experienced in the last 10, 15 years, and that people are afraid to talk about. I'm lucky. Me and Susie, we're off the road right now. We got two little young ones, and so I'm not worried about getting canceled. Fucking cancel me. But I had to keep my mouth shut for a long time because you can't lose the tour. You can't.
Now let me mention too a little bit about your wife now. and
Mhm.
I don't wanna get off track,
Not at
but
all.
Susie Moon, since you mentioned her,
Mhm.
okay, a tremendous artist in her own right, okay,
Yes.
been in several bands. I remember I saw her, okay, with the Dropkick Murphys, probably like 2007, 2008 in Roseland in New York City with Civette, which she used
Mhm.
to play with her sister, I believe,
That's
you
right.
know? And I didn't know her at all. In fact, I've yet to meet her in person. However, um, that's how far back my history with her goes, if you will, and she's been kicking it for a long time and successfully.
Yeah, that's right. She's a professional punk rocker since she was 15 years old. First, she started playing with her older sister's band in Civette. She was playing guitar in that, and yeah, I mean they did all sorts of things. We're on Hellcat. You know, Tim Armstrong was producing that. You know, she's an LA girl and toured all over the U.S., toured all over Japan and Europe and stuff like that. And yeah, she's had a long career in punk rock, and she's a phenomenal artist. She really is. She's a very gifted songwriter. She just has a gift. If some people have a gift,
It comes natural, man. It does.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can refine that with like learning how to, with learning composition and stuff like that. But some people just have it, and she just has it. And she also has a fantastic an understanding of the aesthetic side of a which is really important, and it's something that's also not talked about that much. The importance of having a look to the band and thinking about the visual presentation that really links in with the performance. She's an unbelievable performer. Anybody who's ever seen her, I mean, I might be biased. I really think she's like the greatest of a generation, in terms of punk rock front people.
Yes.
And she's also just a very sweet person. She's a fantastic mother, and she's a great band leader too. That's the other thing. That's another skill. Getting a band on the road, pulling the people together, working with.
Absolutely.
It's
That's more than half the work right there.
it absolutely is. Yeah, people think that being in a band is all partying and getting into hijinks and stuff like that, and it's partly that, but it's a lot of it is actually just sending emails.
Yeah.
A significant part of being in a band is just sending emails. So
No, it's all the management, man. That's something that I would express so often, to bands on the label, bands up and coming bands, you know, quite often like getting signed, that's not the pinnacle, that's the beginning,
but yeah, yeah,
you
and I
know?
think that's actually a bit of a hack is for bands that are out there and they're trying to figure out. It's tougher. It's a lot tougher today than it was before. It's still doable. One thing, and this is advice that I would give anybody, is hold off on getting signed as long as you can. Make sure that you can get on the road and all that stuff. And just be careful about what you sign, because there's a lot, as our punk rock predecessors have
Absolutely.
shown us. There's a lot that you can do yourself, and it will behoove you to do it yourself. Particularly if you start signing away revenue streams, you're gonna really regret that you did that later on.
Well,
So
and today too is such a different world than it was 20 years ago, not to mention 40 years ago, you
yeah,
know? It
that's
really is.
total. It's totally different. But yeah, Susie's phenomenal, uh, phenomenal artist, and we met when I was playing punk rock bowling. Uh, with the Split Seconds. She was her band Turbulent Hearts at the time was playing on the same stage on the same day,
I like
and
Turbulent Hearts, that was a great band.
they absolutely a great band. And
Great name too.
yep, yeah, no, she's been in all kinds of cool projects over the years. She was in a short-lived band called LA Machina, sort of right before we left LA. That was also just a rad band. And Yeah, when we were starting out Susie Moon, there was a lot of pressure. I think, she had gotten some high up industry people who were trying to pigeonhole her and say, hey, as a female artist, this is what you want to do. This is sort of the route that you should take. And at the time, there was a big trend of sort of doing the bad on purpose thing for women in particular, being intentionally sort of ugly, discordant, and so on and so forth. And when we were sort of thinking about Susie Moon and what we wanted to do for that band, one of our big influences was actually Pat Benatar. And Pat Benatar, her husband is the guitar player, so there was that connection. And we thought, well, maybe we could do something like that, but with a lot more guts to it. And the thing about Susie is that, in terms of being in a band that's ugly on purpose, well, first of all, she's very attractive, so that's tough. And then the second thing is that she actually really likes like old Hollywood. She has all these other things that she's interested in. She likes glamour. She likes beauty, and we were just talking, and I think it wasn't my idea or anything like that, but I just gave her sort of permission. I was like, look, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you think is cool and what calls to you, then let's do that. And fuck them that say you should grow out your armpit hair and scream about men.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and by the way, like I wouldn't have been particularly interested in a band like that either. And I'd like to keep our instruments in tune. That's just me. Other bands are welcome to do that. But I think that was in terms of, because Susie Mean, that band had a really pretty remarkable run. We came out at the end of COVID, and we first EP came out on Pirates, and it like sold out in the pre-sale. Like it was like a record for how quickly they'd had a record sell out in
Great.
pre-sale.
Great.
And so it was like we were really onto something. And like playing those shows, I mean, the responses we were getting from audiences was like nothing I'd ever seen. And it built up so fast. I mean, you hear about bands exploding.
Mhm.
And that's really kind of what we were experiencing, where it kind of happened really sort of overnight. Everything sort of got locked in terms of the support we needed, and we were just on the road. And so that was very cool. And it was cool that we did something that we felt was authentic to us. It wasn't, and very few people had negative, comments about it or anything like that. I mean, you would almost never hear, any of the sort of intersectional types, shitting on us or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you think part of that was because it was a female-fronted band?
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Because even then, the naysayers are afraid to cross a line by insulting a woman as opposed where they would insult a man.
yeah, I think there was not, I'm not sure what people were maybe saying behind our back or anything like that. And the other thing was that a lot of this, once you get to a certain level of professionalism, then there's a less of a tolerance for bullshit.
Yes,
And
I
like
agree.
that kind of bullshit. And so the fact was, and the other thing is that if there's somebody, when you're on tour, if there's somebody who's got an attitude like that, okay, well, I'm not going to see you in another 2 hours. I'm hopping in the van and I'm out of here. So that was cool. Where you tend to see these attitudes, and this sort of cancel culture, a lot of the time it is in these local scenes, which I think is really a problem because it's choking off the bands that should be forming right now, the bands that
Absolutely.
should be trying new things and experimenting and seeing what they can push back on. If there's going to be just a climate of fear and this sort of circular shooting range of people trying to cancel each other and you know trip each other up on breaking one dogma or another, you're not going to get the new bands in. And you can see this, when you're having festivals now, punk rock festivals, and it's headlined by like Misfits and Stooges and Black Flag, or whatever is remaining of Black Flag. And this would be like Gershwin headlining like Woodstock.
Mhm.
You wouldn't
Yes.
have seen this in the 90s. I mean, in the 90s, it was like Nirvana took the Buzzcocks out on tour, and Blink-182 took Bad Religion out on tour. The new band that was doing the new thing was still going to be like the hot topic. Maybe I shouldn't say hot topic, but you get what I'm saying. And now it's like the energy has gone out of it in a lot of ways, because there's what are bands
Well,
going to do?
it's killed so many things too, unfortunately. It is because it's taken all the fun out of it, number one, which we've
Yeah,
talked about before.
yeah,
Something that I wanna say, I don't know if I'm getting my dates right, okay? But I don't know if it was 2018, I believe Warped Tour was the last Warped Tour ever, and I believe you were on that one, correct?
yeah,
Yes. So I don't know if it was 2018 or 2017, you may remember when, um, that whole controversy went with it, a couple of, I don't even know what to call them, holier than thou women in the audience were screaming at the band and got them taken off stage and bounced off of Warped Tour. Do you remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah, this was 2017.
It was
And it was
2017. All right.
yeah, it was 2017, and, yeah, the band was War on Women. They're actually a Baltimore band, so just kind of up the road
Yes.
from where I was. And, have friends in common with them and stuff like that. And, yeah, this to me, this was the moment where there was, like, where sort of, the intersectional ethos, this subset of punk rockers that had adopted this very sort of intolerant view that can't be reconciled with the previous sort of tolerant liberal ethos, and that's when it really sort of became ascendant. That's when it became locked in. That's when it became like, this is what punk rock was, one thing, and now it's this thing.
Yes.
And so yeah, what had happened was Shauna, I guess when she's not playing rock and roll, she's actually a corporate harassment trainer type of thing. So it's literally like the HR lady is showing up at Punk Rock Bowling to like rain on everybody's good time, or on Warped Tour. And so, yeah, she rolled up there. She had an organization called Safer Spaces. And by the way, it's expensive to take people on tour. So
Don't I know it?
yeah, so when you just decide to just bring this organization with you. And it was the Dickies, and it's a band I love.
Yeah.
They're a great band. They've been around since the late 70s, and they're a very goofy band, like kind of a comic book, like goofy band, and do irreverent stuff. But it's
I'm very familiar. They're fun guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally in jest. And she, I guess one of the people in her organization they were heckling Leonard Phillips and the Dickies for days, trying to get a rise out of them. She says this specifically. I looked up an article recently to try to sort of remember that time, and she says specifically, we were trying to provoke him. We were trying to get him to lash out at us, and he did. And he went off on her, and then she basically ran to Kevin Lyman and got them kicked off the tour, got them canceled off the tour. And a band like Dickies, who are like super, they've paid their dues, and they got a lot of people.
They've been around for what, 40 years now?
And they're a great band. They could always play. Yeah. They could always write great songs, And so if a band like War on Women can just get them kicked off the tour for saying like mean things, then okay, well, this isn't the same scene anymore. Like, this isn't the same thing anymore. And I looked up a quote from her. So she had her own Vice magazine column, apparently. And she looks up, she says, regarding Phillips, she says, "That's not punk. Maybe it used to be. Maybe fucking shit up at all costs was exciting and revolutionary in the conservative Reagan era. But now we have Trump. And while the white dudes in power are still conservative, they also look just like the Dickies or Phillips. Bands like this often look and sound exactly like the people they're rallying against. Those who hate women and queers and people of color and refugees and people with physical and mental challenges. And they sound just like them to us." And so, that's a good encapsulation of the attitude of the intersectional types. And it demonstrates racial prejudice. My thing around this time was like, where are the sharps?
Yeah.
Where are the sharps right now?
Where is a sharp when you need one?
Where's a sharp when you need one? You know what I mean? I mean, this is astonishing. Bands like this often.
Now, for our listeners who don't know what a sharp is a skinhead against racial prejudice.
That's right.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. They did a good job in making sure that people in marginalized communities were protected at shows and stuff like that. It's just it's sort of like, hey, I guess all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, right?
There you go. Yeah.
It's sort of how that worked out. Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and this again, though, is what took this attitude, these bands, these attendees, are what slowly and relatively quickly, but slowly, took all the fun out of it. And I think that's what's hurt rock and roll more than anything, is it does not have the teeth that it once had. The humor that it once had is no longer allowed. And just talking about Warped Tour now, here, Warped Tour was, for many young bands like yourself, I'm sure, especially when you were 16, 17, 18 years old, the dream of dreams was to once play Warped Tour. you know? And luckily your dream did eventually come true, okay? But now there is no longer a Warped Tour. It's over, and it's over because of it not being fun anymore.
This this change in the ethos in the scene has really just kind of knocked the ladder out for new bands. First, new bands forming, new bands getting together, and sort of deciding for them, deciding for a new generation what punk rock means to them. Um, and it could have been anything. The only thing it couldn't have been is something that was so exclusionary and discriminatory and was forcing people to think a certain way. You know, I would never say, and you can't say that this spirit that animates punk rock, the spirit that had manifested itself as punk rock, you can't say, well, it has to be this or it has to be that. But what you can say is that we're not allowed to say what it's not allowed to be. Essentially, or more accurately, we're not allowed to say that it has to be this, that it has to be this prescribed set of views and
Well,
beliefs.
of course, because you're taking all of the freedom and the beauty of self-expression and
Hmm.
forcing it into a box.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. And so, and other genres, like I've said, is that other genres have figured this out. People will talk about the economic reasons why rock and roll is not doing well, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong about Spotify underpaying artists. XM, by the way, has is holding on to all of Susie Moon's royalty money. So there's all kinds of stuff going on the economic side, but other genres, country is doing fine. Country's doing great. Hip hop seems to be doing well. I don't know as well, but it seems to be doing well. Pop, there's a ton of pop artists. Taylor Swift is a billionaire. This is a new artist, and I've never listened to Bad Bunny, but he seems to be doing great too. So there's smart business people and there's ways to do it. And we were doing it ourselves with Susie Moon. It's a different business model, but you can figure out the economic side of stuff. What you can't do is you can't take something that's just so unfun and so unedgy and so stuck in its dogma and make it exciting and make it relevant. You can't do that. And so I genuinely think that it's this particular change in values that is the responsibility. And I'll tell you that with Susie Moon, the reason why we stopped touring and stuff like that, it wasn't because of this stuff. It was because we ultimately decided we wanted to have a family, that was more important to us than fame. And it was a tough decision to make because we were on an incredible trajectory, and we were getting really cool offers. And but ultimately, we had to make that, or we wanted to make that choice. We had to,
Yes, you chose to. You
yeah,
chose
what
to.
was most important to us. But the decision was made easier. It was made a lot easier because at this point we had felt sort of estranged from our own scene. We felt alienated from our own scene, and we saw it sort of rotting on the vine. We were playing with a lot of, getting opening spots with a lot of bands and getting offers with a lot of bands who were 30, 40, 50 years old. And there was no new supply of cool new bands in the punk rock milieu. And the kids weren't coming out. You'd have it some places. It was doing better in Europe than it was in the United States.
Right.
But um,
Well,
just,
Europe has a whole different attitude towards art and towards music anyway.
yeah.
I think they do tend to, and don't get me wrong, Europe has got plenty of problems of their own, but they do tend to. I just know bands that would go over there year after year and they would come back and the rockabilly kids will listen to the punk rock kids who will listen to the ska kids who will listen to the skin kids, and it's a show and we
Mhm.
want to see what you're about. If I
Yeah.
don't like you, I'll go get a beer, you know?
That's right. It's still, um, a live music culture over there, and a culture of going out and going out as a community to catch bands and stuff like that. And yeah, and I recall that. I recall that from when I was like real early on, going out to things like HF Festival or going out to local shows in DC. I mean, there was something called DCSka.com when I was in like middle school and high school, and they would just announce some ska show or some punk show that was happening, and you'd get hundreds of kids that would come out and check out these bands. And it's gone now, and it should be gone in a way. If this is going to be what punk rock is, then I'm not surprised that it's sort of.
Do you think that it is, well, It's not wholly leftist because it's everybody that buys into it, but it is that kind of thing where the far left does so often tend to eat itself.
Yeah, and I mean, getting into a whole, became very, um, familiar with sort of intersectional ideology during
Yes.
the time because it was all around me, and I was trying basically to avoid it. I was basically trying to outrun it. Um, and so I became very familiar with it, and it does have its roots in the sort of political philosophies that have destroyed places like Russia
It's
and
Marxist. It is a
I mean,
it comes from a Marxist kind of background, if I'm not mistaken.
it does. It does. It's essentially applying a Marxist material dialectic to all these different social, um, all of these different.
I mean, not to get too political here,
Not
but that's part of it.
well, we can at least be descriptive,
Yes.
which is it's applying this dialectic to all these different social relationships. So whereas under Marxism, you have the oppressor class, which is the bourgeoisie, and then the oppressed class, which is the proletariat.
Mhm.
You take this sort of a thing, which is a great way to manufacture conflict where it doesn't need to be, by the way. And you apply it to, so you have, people of color are the oppressed class, whites are the oppressor class. You have people who are able-bodied are the oppressor class, people who are disabled are the oppressed class. And the intersectionality refers to the intersection of all of these relationships, these power relationships. The thing, yeah, and it doesn't. The thing is, if you got a white kid who's grown out where I'm living now in West Virginia and doesn't have a lot of opportunities, they're still going to be seen as the oppressor,
Mhm.
and that's just one of the ways that this ideology misses. For the purposes of this discussion, I think the important there's two things. First is that this was coming from top down. This wasn't like an organic thing that just rose up out of people in the punk rock scene who would just come to these conclusions independently. This was like I said, like these was coming out of the universities. These were kids who were being sort of indoctrinated into these views and bringing it into the punk rock scene. Um, and I think, probably more importantly, because I would have been perfectly fine with there being a corner of the scene that was intersectional. I would have welcomed it. Okay, you want to do that? Like that's cool. You can sort of do it, but it's when they start coming into, Warped Tour or coming into all Kung Fu Necktie and
Yes.
saying, "You fucker, you brought a pizza in here with pepperoni. Well, now you're fucking out."
Yes.
You know what I
That's a
mean?
true story. That's a true
Yeah,
story.
yeah, exactly. And so it's not it can't be reconciled with that previous ethos of tolerance and it's sad. It's sad, but it is eating itself. But it's also eating the scene. It's eating the whole scene because it's taken over the whole scene.
Yes. Absolutely.
I think most recently there was something that really disgusted Susie was it was with the Punk in the Park promoter. I guess one of these guys had been seen. I guess he had donated money to the Trump campaign, and we've talked. I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a fan. Um, but there was this whole media firestorm about it, and basically this guy got canceled. And this is you can agree with this guy or disagree with this guy. The idea that you're just going to shun him from the scene and all that stuff is
Well,
really.
and then hurt the scene again, like you said. What the hell do you care? You know? And then there's such hypocrites and morons too, because every giant corporation in the world is doing something similar or something different. It has a million different views. You continue to buy all those products because it's something that you want. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I understand it's the ethics of this whole thing, and then we go into a whole like other conversation. You know, I think just to keep it with punk rock, it's like, okay, like I get that there's all these problems in the world. Like there
Mhm.
really are. There really are.
Oh,
And I agree with these people on like 99% of this stuff and want to see progress and I want to see change and all that stuff. This ideology and this way of going about it is so wrongheaded. Arguing with people like this and early on when I was trying to push back, um, what occurred to it's like this a priori like moral frame that they have. You sort of you can't have good faith discussions with them, and you can't have good faith arguments with them because it's really a religious view. And going,
Absolutely. I agree.
it is. It's and you know, and so a lot of I don't know exactly how human cognition works, but I can tell you what I've seen, which is clearly there's like this moral frame that's sitting in front of their logical brain that
Yes.
processes evidence and
Yes.
makes judgments, and it's blocking that. And this is scary. It's concerning, and it's really choking the life out of the scene. You know, punk rock at its core, it's not any particular set of views, but it is a spirit. It is a spirit, and it's a spirit, and you see it manifest itself, throughout time in different ways. You can talk about punk rock as like this music style and this scene and this artistic movement, but it's often used in other ways. It's used in terms of, Johnny Cash or something like that. I mean, I think you can probably think of some examples of this, but it's where a sort of upstart, energetic movement or force or something like that is challenging an existing corrupt sort of moribund power structure.
Sure.
And you see this over and over again in history. And this particular ideology is really driving that spirit out of the scene. It's driving the kids out of the scene. And it's sad to see. I mean, I've had to grieve it, particularly, I think it's, even though I think that in the broader culture, I think that intersectionality is losing steam for one reason or another. I think that actually in the punk rock scene, it's getting more intense.
You do. You find it getting worse.
In the punk rock scene, I think it's getting worse, and this could be related. I think it is related to Trump being back in office and stuff like that. But it's gone from where people are. I mean, I've been seeing like death threats, against people, like credible death threats, where it's taken on like a very. It was one thing where it's like, okay, well, you're not going to play the show. It's another thing where people are like literally threatening to like kill relatives.
Let me ask you this on this point, because I don't want to lose this point here. So I'm happy to say, over the last year and a half, 2 years, we've seen a lot of things that were such a big part of this particular zeitgeist have started to collapse. BLM is all but dead. Antifa on their heels. I mean, there's still a lot of problems with them, still a lot of violence, still a lot of bullshit going on. And we can, again, a whole nother conversation. I'm just using it as a point, though. The whole trans thing now is beginning to become reversed because people are realizing what a horror show that was. Okay. And again, a whole nother topic.
Whole other topic.
But do you think that what's left of the punk community that is hanging on to this and fighting so hard are seeing it almost as their Custer's last stand, if you will?
Yeah.
Therefore they're trying as hard as they can to put their foot on the throat of anybody that just wants to come out and have a good time and sing some songs.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
I think the
Well, good, because I like it when people agree with me.
Well, like I was saying, is when I first saw this stuff bubbling up, I thought it was sort of an aberration, and I thought, hey, a couple people got a weird idea in their heads, and this was a trend, and it would come up and it would go down. What I realized, as this went on, was that actually this was top down. Kids were learning this in universities. Kids were, getting this in entertainment. They were getting this through certain popular websites and stuff like that. And this was top down. This was an intentional. And I think, for one reason or another, these power structures, the elites have decided that this is actually more of a liability than it is a benefit. Feeding this sort of ideology into young people's heads. And I think that them sort of pulling back on it is why it's sort of dying off. However, the people who were most indoctrinated into it and got their status and their community,
or they believe it, like you say, it's a religion now.
They believe it, like they're true believers, and it's strange for somebody who doesn't believe in that stuff and who actually really sees it as a problem.
Let me ask you this now, too, just out of curiosity, because we brought it up. So for myself, as many of my listeners know, and I'm sure you know since we're friends, I didn't even graduate high school, know? So, and I know you're a college boy. Now, did you get a lot of this in college? Because I know my son was the stuff that, it was our dream to send our son to college, right? And
Hmm.
my daughter, and they both went to college, did very well. However, it was shocking to me the stories that he would come back. He went to State University in New York, all right? And when I found out that they had segregated dorms. Now, segregated only if you were black and wanted to live in a black only dorm, or Asian and wanted to live in an Asian only dorm. It wasn't segregated for anybody else.
Hmm.
I refused to believe it until he showed me, no, these are the black dorms. These are the Asian dorms. He could physically show them to me. And then, of course, luckily, he did not buy into or take part in any of this mania that we're talking about here today. Did you find that in university yourself? Was this a problem for you?
No, I got it actually much earlier on. I was like I grew up in a very sort of left wing area out of DC. My family was like a pretty left wing, like very left wing family, particularly my mother. And I went to like very liberal schools, early on. So what people were calling woke or what people are calling intersectionality, I kind of got a heavy dose of that when I was like in middle school and
Right,
early, and I didn't have it fully fleshed out, but I think it actually allowed me to develop a bit of a tolerance to it.
right.
I like I say, it was more of like a gut thing, like a vibe thing where I was like, there's something wrong with that thing. And I just kind of wanted to steer clear of it. And so when I went to school, I had studied engineering. And part of the reason why I did that was because I just didn't want to be part of the humanities. Like I just felt like it was hostile, and unfair. And so I was able to kind of avoid a lot of that stuff. I know it was going on when I was there. It wasn't at the fever pitch that it reached like a couple years later. It wasn't like as unavoidable as it was a couple years later. Um, but no, thankfully I was largely spared of that in college. And it was a process for me to sort of deprogram myself sort of in late high school from some of the excesses of that ideology that I had gotten. And it was just part, yeah, I'd gotten it so young that it was sort of part of just like my background, like my firmware, you know? But the more you get out into life and you experience things and you ask yourself questions, then the more you, and try to work things through things on your own, then I had to abandon a lot of those and challenge the things that I was taught.
Well, I know too, you're a new father of 2, correct?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
father of 2, married man.
Hmm.
I guess the point I wanted to make, which happens with everybody, kind of the old Winston Churchill thing about, anyone who's 20 and not a liberal has no heart, and anybody who's 40 is not conservative has no brain, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, have you seen now that here's a fella yourself, been in several bands, professional musician, traveled all over the country, been on Warp Tour, many, many other tours, our very own Upstart Fest, things like this. Um, but where you're sitting now, in your mid 30s, I believe, you
Hmm.
know, being a father, you see the world in a different way, don't you?
Um, I think that threats, things that I always kind of understood to be threats, are more like pressing to me now.
Hmm.
Like there's a certain aspect of, hey, if it was just me, like whatever. But now that I'm responsible for these two beautiful little boys, and I'm also responsible in a way, for my wife, that I take things more seriously in that way. But I'm like you in that I'm neither left nor right, and I sort of have my own views, especially like personal views. And that Susie and I have found what works for us and what works for our family, and so I had sort of detached from a lot of what I was indoctrinated with when I was very young. I had detached from that by the time I was in my late teens,
Hmm.
and then seeing it rise up and in this way that it did in punk rock, and seeing how harmful it was, and seeing this just almost cartoonishly evil
Yes.
weird thing um become hegemonic in our culture. It it didn't make me, it just sort of confirmed what I had thought, and it just made me more steadfast in believing those things. And, so I wouldn't have had children. I wouldn't have had a family. I wouldn't have been able to be in a marriage and in a good marriage. And I'm very grateful that I am in a good marriage and I have, we have a happy family. I don't think that it would have been possible for me to do those things if I had actually held on to any of those beliefs.
Yes.
Um, I
Yes.
think that, particularly the, a lot of the stuff that comes on the feminist side where it sets men and women apart, again, with this sort of Marxist dialectic applied to different social relationships. One of them is men as the oppressors and women as the oppressed,
Yes.
and that's going to cause conflict. And because me and Susie, we have to collaborate, and we had to collaborate in the band.
As all families do, though.
That's right.
This
Yeah,
is a thing that people don't seem to get from this mindset of traditional somehow being bad. For thousands and thousands of years, we have all had to collaborate to make it work.
that's right.
And
And
that's not just man and woman, that's races too, that's everybody. We've all had to collaborate in some sense to make the world work and take steps forward. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, we have to work together. And the strength of Susie and I is, and it has been this way back in the band, and it's this way now in our marriage, is that we're very complementary.
Mhm.
We're not the same person. We're quite different in a lot of ways, but she's very strong where I'm weak, and I'm very strong where she's weak. And it's that synthesis between the two of us working together and being on the same page and having mutual respect that is that's so important. And I can't imagine, and I've seen it happen to people and families and relationships around me when that oppressor oppressed viewpoint comes into it, it just causes conflict and it precludes people from working together the way that they need to, in order for anybody to have a good outcome. I think this is a truly destructive idea, like sort of basket of thoughts and values. What's wrapped up in the intersectionality. And I think if people give themselves, if there's any punk rockers listening or anybody else who's gotten a heavy dose of this in college or something like that, or through bands, if they were listening to Anti-Flag before it was found out that he was, raping scores of women,
Yes.
that and they were sort of indoctrinated into this. I'm personally, Drew from Susie Moon is giving you moral permission, which is what you need. You need moral permission to question this and to say, is this really good? Is this really conducive to people being able to flourish, to the well-being of children, to the well-being of marginalized communities, to the well-being of the environment? Whatever it is that you value, ask yourself if this prescription that has been handed to you from on high is really good for that. And I believe that you will find, as I did, if you are honest with yourself, that it is not, that it is purely destructive, that it turns people against each other, that it divides people and it undermines unity, and you can tell that I've become passionate about it because I've seen what it's done, and now I've seen what it's done to our scene. This
Yes.
beautiful, dynamic thing that was this source, this flowering of so much great art, and I hate seeing that, and I've had to mourn it, and I've mourned it over the course of a decade. Keep hoping that it pulls through. Keep hoping that it beats this thing, that it rejects this cancer, and it's failed to. And I don't know, I don't know what the future holds for punk rock and for rock and roll. And I do believe that this is a perennial spirit that animated it. I don't know if it's going to come back under the moniker of punk, under the label of punk. It'll be somewhere. I don't know if it's going to sound the same or look the same, and I don't know if this corpse can be reanimated. I
I
sure
don't
hope
know if it should sound or look the same. It should be whatever it is naturally, you know?
whatever it is.
And,
Yeah,
and to your point there too, very well said, by the way. That was quite the soliloquy you landed there. That was very, very good. That was excellent. Um, and for myself, so much of it, and I think a lot of it has to do with my age. And of course, the businesses that I've been mixed up in, I've always been the boss. So a lot of things kind of, uh, I never had to take a knee to anybody else, which was always very, very a great place to be. Okay. But what's broken my heart over the last few years is watching so many, many beautiful people that you and I both know, people
Yeah.
that we love and consider friends, succumb to this, shall I say, sickness, this
Yeah.
disease, this
Mm.
cancer of the woke or intersectionality or whatever, give it a name, whatever we want to call it. It's all the same shit, and has stolen the goodness and happiness of life from them. And that's, again, I know I've mentioned happiness and fun and, numerous times how it's not fun anymore, but so many people now are
Yeah.
miserable about this,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And now they find themselves, in their 30s or 40s. I mean, again, granted, I'm so much older than most of you guys, but they find themselves in these later years and life has passed them by. And they realize the last 10, 15 years, they have been nothing but miserable and have preached nothing but misery.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to me.
Yeah. And I can understand, and I think a lot of these people, um, they really are driven by good intentions. They want to see the world be
I
a,
agree. I absolutely believe that.
and this is, they see suffering in the world, they see injustice in the world, and they rightly want to address it, and they want to do something to make things better, and that's a virtue. That's a virtue to them to do that, and their compassion is a virtue. What's really sad is seeing then it's one thing to make a critique, but it's quite another thing to offer a solution.
Yes.
And when people rightfully see this stuff and they want to do something about it, and then this is held out as okay, well, this is the solution, and they go all in on this. And the truth is, if you are making a true personal sacrifice, um, and and you're making the world better, you're moving the needle in terms of allowing people to flourish. That's great, and that's worthwhile. When people get into this particular mindset, this ideology, and they want to work with this ideology to come to solutions, you're not making anything better. You're making things worse, like for everybody. You're
Yes.
sacrificing to create more problems.
Correct.
For the love of God, stop
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
This has been a hell of a talk, my friend.
I've had a great time, Travis. We always
Yeah.
have great chat. Great
I
chats.
do. Yes.
Yeah.
We always have a good back and forth, So,
Yeah.
and, we don't always agree on stuff, which
We
is
don't.
important. And
Yeah.
yet we still love one another
I
as it
love you,
should be.
man.
Yeah.
You're my homie. What? How fun? It wouldn't be fun if we agreed on everything.
No, not at all.
Then we wouldn't get to argue.
Yes. Never ever have I felt the threat of cancellation from you, my friend.
I would
So,
never cancel you.
yeah. Well,
I would never
very
I would
good.
never cancel Travis Myers. He's my favorite guy. He's my favorite murder detective. Mhm.
So listen, I think we're kind of gonna wrap it up here, unless you have something else poignant that you want to add.
There's so many stories. There's so many little things we could
We
talk
could go on
about,
for
but
hours.
we could go on forever. You know what I mean? But I think that covers it really. And I would actually just reach out, like ask anybody. People can find me on socials and so on. And if anybody's pissed off about what I've said, if anybody really has a problem with what I've said, fine. Feel free to reach out to me. Just
Yes,
let's
let's
talk.
discuss.
Let's just get a dialogue going.
Yes.
Okay.
It's so much better to discuss than to cancel.
And they can't cancel me at this point because I canceled myself. I'm out. You know what I mean? Um, but they'll probably try. But just go ahead and reach out to me. If you actually don't want to have a discussion and you just want to rage at me, then then don't reach out. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
Very
But
good.
if you want to have a chat, then reach out to me and I'd be happy to hear from you.
Good.
Yeah.
So before we go now, before we cut out, we're going to cut out with a split-second song written by you called Cutting Out, which happens to be our theme song for the show. All right? You want to tell us anything about that before we play it?
So Cutting Out by the Split Seconds. That's about all there is. It's just a fun rock and roll song.
Outstanding.
I hope everybody enjoys it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Drew. Until next time, my friend.
Thanks, Travis.
Here we go. Cutting Out by the Split Seconds.
keep my eyes on the blacktop, try to think about nothing. So sick of standing still that I'm running. Count my 2 weeks, I didn't say goodbye. At long last I made up my mind. I can't keep waiting, staring into space, watching nothing fall into place. Yeah, there is something needs to change right now. Something needs to happen somehow. Cutting out, sick of wasting my time. Cutting out, sick of falling behind. Got caught in the static disaster. I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out. Gotta move faster. Acceleration, feeling like it should. Been so long since feeling felt good. Liberation, I gotta try my luck. Even though I'll probably fuck it all up, but I won't be like the man I've known. Castrated by a comfort zone, no, I won't get stuck in the space between what is and what might have been. Cutting out, sick of wasting my time. Cutting out, sick of falling behind. Got caught in a static disaster. I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out. Gotta move faster. Sharp teeth sticking in me, like sharp teeth sticking in me, like sharp teeth, like sharp teeth sticking in me, like sharp teeth sticking in me, like sharp teeth sticking in me. Gotta take control. Cutting out, sick of going nowhere. Cutting out, sick of losing my share. Cutting out, sick of getting let down. Sick of failing, sick of fucking around. I'm cutting out, sick of wasting my time. Cutting out, sick of falling behind. I got caught in a static disaster. I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out. Gotta move faster. I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out, I'm cutting out. Gotta move faster.
All right. There you have it, everybody. Drew Champion of the Split Seconds, a truly phenomenal band. Do yourself a favor, check them out on YouTube. They got a bunch of videos up there. And if ever they're coming through your town, go check them out. I promise you'll be happy you did. So, until next time, please do the right thing. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. It helps us out so much. And all the best, my friends. Hey, how you doing? Another nobody here, Travis Myers. This one's going out in particular to all my drinking friends out there, because I got a new favorite thing, and it's called Shanky's Whip, and it is magical. It's Irish whiskey mixed with a little caramel, a little cream, a little vanilla, and it's heavenly. What more can I say? I suggest you pick up a bottle. You can have it as a shot with a cold beer, like I like. On the rocks, it's great. Mix it with a little cola. I promise you, you're going to love this stuff. Next time you raise a glass, think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. Hey, do the right thing. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my nonsense. All the best, my friends. Listen up, this one's important. As a rule, I never stump for charities, because most of them don't hand out as much money as they collect, and that's a sad fact. But not Tunnel to Towers. These guys do the right thing. They have an A+ rating from Charity Watch, and a 4-star rating from Charity Navigator. That's like the #1 charity watchdog group, with over 93% going towards the families of veterans and first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty. For only $11 a month, and it's easy. Just go to t2t.org. That's letter T, number 2, letter T.org, and hit the donate button. Do the right thing and do good for the families and the veterans and the first responders who do good by you. It's only $11 a month. Thanks, and all the best.